Okay, let's talk about egg freezing. Topic 3 of 4. This is I think an unusual one. We probably don't talk about this enough as societies, so I wanted to add this one into the mix. Behavioral principles at play. We're going to talk about complexity, rules of thumb, availability and salience, optimism bias, and mental models. Here we go. Okay, so this is similar to the job scenario. There are lots and lots of inputs to our fertility. Yes, age matters a lot, but so does BMI, all of these other input genes. These things matter a lot, but somehow we don't like to deal with the complexity of this. It's hard. And so we've kind of created a simplification for women and kind of said, well, age is kind of the most important thing that matters. And we don't talk enough about these other elements. It's too complicated. The other thing that's happened is we've kind of made up this magical number of 35, which has actually nothing to do, the history of that comes from the 70s, and it has to do with genetic testing for Down syndrome and other kind of chromosomal issues like that. So there's no magic number around 35. It's just kind of this rule of thumb oversimplification that we've created. So let's kind of, I think one takeaway there should be like, if women are kind of interested in this, you should probably just test for fertility early on and kind of drop this idea of 35. Okay, let's do another poll here and we can play a game. We're going to launch this in just a second. Rank these causes by number of death in the United States. So we've got shark attacks, accidental falls, and lawnmower injuries. And Lucy, I'm going to let you run this because I can't see anything about the poll running, but I trust you. You got it.
It's running.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for participating. We're getting some speedy responses.
Awesome. Love it. People are excited. Or I'm going to my optimism bias is going to have me interpret that as excitement.
Great. I'm going to close this off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right.
And what did people think?
The results are we're getting 1% for shark first and 83% for fall first, lawnmower, shark.
Yay.
14% for lawnmower, fall, and shark. So
awesome.
Honorable mentions for choice A and D, but
okay,
D is the one.
Great. So this wasn't an exercise so much in ranking, but what I want to point out here is just the magnitude of the difference. Like I was shocked. This first number, by the way, is from the CDC. Like I didn't make this up from some random website. This is from the CDC. Accidental falls over 35,000 per year is just at a whole different scale of sharks. And yet sharks, if anyone, raise your hand if you've heard some story in the news at some point about sharks and shark attacks and oh my gosh, and it's available in our mindset. Yeah, thanks, you use the raise your hand feature. I was meaning just like physically, just raise your hand, but cool. I appreciate it. Just look at the magnitude of difference here, right? This is it. We hear stories of this. It sounds dramatic. We have this image of this scary shark that hits us, our brain in a very different way than this idea of like, oh, okay, falls. From a rational standpoint, you guys got the answer right, but there's something visceral about this kind of this availability bias of how easily we can kind of recall a moment that would make us guess. Next time, if I do this webinar again, or use these slides again, I'll actually have people guess the number because I can see just transparently, I would have never guessed 35,000 a year anywhere near so high. And so what's the parallel here? The parallel here is we just see celebrity headlines. Again, raise your hand if you've seen something like this. Janet Jackson gives birth at 50. Or like you've ever had, so if maybe you've mentioned to like someone that you might be considering egg freezing, oh, honey, you don't have to worry about that. Did you know my relative so-and-so had a baby at 48? You kind of get these really helpful feedback from people that like, oh no, it's possible. But statistically, these things are very much anomalies, 48 or 50. But when we hear stories like this and they're kind of magnified, they're amplified in our brain in terms of the probability of them happening, right? So we're kind of misinterpreting what the true statistics are by having salient stories like this. Okay, so I mentioned optimism bias. Let's play another little game here. We're going to do a poll in a second, not yet. This is a study by Tali Chavreau, where she asked people what the probability of an adverse event was. So the types of things that she gave were like getting cancer or being in an earthquake or other accidents, diseases, etc. And let's say they said 50%. I estimate my chance of this bad thing happening to be 50%. Okay, and then we're gonna have some experts look at this, and we're gonna crunch your data and look at your health history and etc. We're gonna tell you, actually, it turns out that your chance is only 30%. Would you like to go back to your number and change it? Please go back and put in a new number if you like. And so what did people put on average? They adjusted. Okay, great. I'm just gonna adjust it. The experts told me 35%. Good to know. What happens if they started with a low number? Some people picked a really low number. Oh, only 10% chance that's going to happen to me. And the experts come in and say, hey, we've looked at your situation. It turns out you might have 30% chance of this adverse event, say it's cancer or whatever. What happens here? Let's do a poll. When they're given the chance to change their percentage, what do they do?
Sorry.
What do we have?
Okay, and I'm gonna end it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 44% of people said that they had a 15% chance going on afterwards. That was the first choice. And the other ones were equal.
Okay, thank you.
There you go, sharing the results for everyone.
Oh, wonderful, thanks. Okay, so what we see here is that people basically ignore almost entirely the expert's recommendation, and they stick with their original belief that bad things are going to happen to other people and not to me. The chance of anything bad happening to me is very low. By the way, I think that one of the best examples of optimism bias is if you ask divorce lawyers, right as they're brand new, like newlyweds, like, cool, what do you think your chance of divorce is? What do they think they say? 0. They're divorce lawyers. They probably know the statistics better than anyone. And yet we all have this. And it's actually, from a human standpoint, a beautiful thing. I'm very happy that we have this optimism bias. The only people who kind of don't have optimism bias are clinically depressed, unfortunately. So optimism bias generally for humans is probably a good thing. For the space of fertility, for the space of egg freezing, can be a little challenging because we might underestimate how, whether we might need any kind of fertility assistance later, and we might underestimate how many eggs a woman should freeze. So let's just do this one. How many eggs should a woman freeze for 90% chance of one baby? We're not talking about multiple, just one, and just chose the 90% chance. We're going to do a poll for this. So Chris and Anitra, you guys are anchoring. It's really funny that I can't see these polls, by the way, but it's okay. I'm just.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. Don't apologize. This keeps it fun for us. Let's let people.
Cutting
yes,
it
no
off
Google cheating,
5,
by the way. No
4,
Google cheating.
3, 2, 1. All right. So 50% of people said you would need to freeze more than 20 eggs. Followed by 17% of people who said, I have no idea. I respect that.
Nice.
And then we got 12, 10, we got 15, 10, 5 in order of eggs you need to freeze.
Awesome. Thank you so much for reading that out. I appreciate it. And I apologize. Yeah, sorry for everyone else. I'm sure you can see the screen that we see, or I hope you can see the screen that she's sharing. Okay, so let's go to the answer for this. Dun, dun, dun. This is a chart, what we have here on the left, I'll just talk through it. This is the number of eggs that you need. Let's ignore the egg donor column. Most people don't do that. And over at the right here is the age. And so what I did here is I highlighted 90 and above. And so if we had to kind of create a rule of thumb here, it obviously depends on age, et cetera, but if we had to create one, it would certainly, I would put it at 30 or more. And so if you think about the number of eggs that are retrieved on an average cycle, which is between 8 to 14, what this means is typically you need more than one cycle of egg freezing. You might need 2, you might need 3 to get to this number of eggs. And we just don't go in. Like if I think back to myself, I did egg freezing many years ago. The first time I did it, I was so proud of myself. Oh, I took care of, I did such this smart thing, and I'm in my future, and I didn't have anywhere near the right number of eggs, but I just kind of had it in my head. It's like, I checked that box, I'm done. No one explained to me, no one sat through, like, I think it's a hard conversation for doctors to have, given how expensive it is, and kind of setting that expectation. And often, yeah, you might need more than one cycle. So I think this is kind of a challenging space, and you kind of combine this with optimism bias, and we probably have many women under freezing the number of eggs. And I kind of want to touch on this as well, this question of mental models. How do we think of egg freezing? What is it most like? Obviously, it's kind of a unique experience. Anyone have any ideas of if there was a product or service that it's most like? What does it fall into? Okay. Anecdotally, when the way people talk about egg freezing, if you look up articles on this, if you look at celebrity quotes, what people say is they're like, oh yeah, I wanted an insurance policy for myself. That's our closest mental model that people use to think about egg freezing. It seems similar enough. Unfortunately, it's really not. It's dangerous to think about it as an insurance policy. And the biases that are coming into play here is we think of, oh, it's expensive. Each cycle is a lot of money and you're paying out of pocket. And it's not the most fun. You have to inject yourself, you get hormonal. It's kind of the fact that it's expensive and hard makes us more likely to think that there's a guaranteed payout. But that's not how it works, right? The insurance policy, if you have a policy for like, oh, if there's a fire to my house, I get this, or if there's a hurricane that happens, I'm going to get this paid out. That's going to happen. There's no guarantee just because you go through an egg freezing cycle that you get any eggs at all. And even if you do, they don't necessarily turn into babies in the long run. So I think this is just it's a fraught and it's a difficult, challenging space. And I think we should be having better conversations about this as a society. Okay, so takeaways here. 35 is not a magic number. Suggestion to test early, not to treat frozen eggs like an insurance policy, and freezing enough eggs. This often involves more than one cycle. If we had to pick a rule of thumb, I would pick the number 30.